This episode is in partnership with Authority Magazine. Authority Magazine, a Medium publication, is devoted to sharing in-depth and interesting interviews featuring people who are authorities in business, pop culture, wellness, social impact, and tech.
Today's guest has spent 70 years in the Hollywood trenches.
So it's no wonder his new book is called Damn Glad to Meet You, My 7 Decades in the Hollywood Trenches.
From Animal House to the West Wing, he is Tim Matheson. Tim, welcome to Believe in People.
Oh, thank you so much, Amy. It's great to be with you on your show.
Thank you. Well, okay, damn glad to meet you. Spanned 7 decades. 7, okay? 7. I'm not sure if people know this unless they've read your book, so read Tim's book, please. But Tim, you have over 200 acting credits to your name. You've worked with the best. You were in, I'm going to name a few. You were in Magnum Force with Clint Eastwood. That was Clint Eastwood's movie. 1941 with Spielberg. Up the Creek, Fletch, Johnny Quest. I love Johnny Quest. My Three Sons, Room 222, Night Gallery, Bonanza, Kung Fu, The Magician with Bill Bixby, Hawaii Five-0, West Wing, The Goldbergs, hello. And to add that to that, you're a producer and a director. So, okay, what was the most challenging part of distilling a lifetime in Hollywood into one book?
Well, I think that I wanted to make it interesting, and I wanted it to have a point of view rather than just, oh, this is me and here's what I did. And, so basically I felt I was fortunate enough to have started at an early age and am unique in that capacity. There's only a few others, Ronnie Howard, Kurt Russell, Jodie Foster, who started, but I'm older than them. So I started back a little farther and got to work with such icons, like comedian icons as Lucille Ball and Jackie Gleason. I mean, they came directly from vaudeville and through the golden age of cinema. And so the lessons I learned from working with them, I just wanted to make sure that they were recorded and passed on to the younger generation of actors and directors and writers and people, but in any occupation, because they sort of to revisit what they did. I mean, if you look at the old I Love Lucy shows, and then half of them I think most of them are in black and white. It's just classic comedy. I mean, it's like looking at Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin. I mean, it's that great because they worked so hard and diligently to hone their craft and to mine the comedic world they were inhabiting and entertain us, and it was, so I shared the opportunity to work with people like that, and it was a treasure for me because it was like a master's class in comedy.
How much do you think it's changed for young people? You mentioned young people coming into it today. A lot of the Lucy is sight gag. I'm sure a lot of it was improvised. Jackie Gleason certainly appeared to be improvising all the time. How has that changed? Have we lost that craft in some way?
Well, I think that it exists sort of at Saturday Night Live, and it exists in sort of the improv shows, and they're rehearsed.
Second City here
Second
in Chicago.
City. Right, the Second City is classic. I mean, so, and Viola Spolin is the master of it all, with theater games, and created a technique for actors to improv together and build upon. Everybody thinks, oh, you just get up there and try and be funny, and you just say whatever comes into your head. But no, there are games and rules and sort of structures that you can use to build a comedic world out of improv. Vaudeville certainly is gone, but what? There's a world out there that's, I think, stand-up comedy is a world that's like as tough as vaudeville, but there's usually only one person on stage at a time. There's a few companies I think I've seen improv Shakespeare and improv, classic plays. But they're sort of rare, and they have their own rules about how to do it, and you do. But the thing about vaudeville is that those comedians crafted their sketches and their routines down to the second. And like the Marx Brothers, when before they filmed their movies, would take the script and the show on tour and play it before live audiences to find where the laughs were. I can get a bigger laugh if I do this. If I take a pause here, I get a bigger laugh. And then that's what they put on camera when they shot the film. So uh, rehearsal is the key to it all, and especially physical comedy with Lucy, you had to craft it down to the second to get it right. And she would demand, there was no chit chat on stage. When you worked with her in a physical comedy scene, you were part of a machine that performed at a certain level and that was expected of you. And it taught me early on, you better come in, you better deliver the goods.
Part of your book is the fact that you're offering a master class, and you mentioned Lucille Ball, and I know that in one of your videos or clips, or in the book, it said she emphasized practice and rehearse. And I mean, as you said, practice and rehearse. There was no goofing around. There was a real discipline. And in another instance, you mentioned you learned a little something about on the crew. You always learn something from crew members. And you mentioned about a dolly grip on a Clint Eastwood film, and I think he asked Clint something about how do you should I push the camera in, and he said use your gut. Like, I mean, that was such a great thing to say. So wonderful that he allowed people to be creative. But you then went back and spoke to a dolly grip, and he gave you really insightful tips. So this is all learning. Where does this curiosity come? Like, this is a unique skill that you have. Where does this curiosity come from you?
Based on fear. I mean, because here I was a kid who didn't know anything. I hadn't really studied any kind of acting, and I sort of got into it. And I tried to just be very natural and learn from like guys like Jerry Mathers. How did he do it? I mean, they're not doing a lot, so you just simple and honest. But then when I got into a couple of situations where more was asked of me or demanded of me in emotional parts. And generally speaking, I could do it. It just sort of came naturally. But then I got to a point where I was under contract to Universal and I was doing a show. I think it was Owen Marshall, attorney at law. And I was responsible for the death of a fraternity brother. Ironically, it wasn't Animal House. It was before that. And I had to cradle his body and feel the emotion of having been responsible for this young person's death. And I had to, I could, nothing real was coming up for me. And I was like, so I had to go, oh, and just pretend. I had to act crying and being upset. And I got away with it. But I just felt when I drove home that night, I was just bereft. I just felt so horrible. And I said, I'm either going to learn how to do this right or quit, because I don't ever want to feel like this again. I mean, they're entrusting this part in me, and I have to deliver real emotions. I felt, obligated to. I think that was my standard, because that's the people I'd worked with and admired always did that. So that's when I started studying, and I had a sort of, there was 3 or 4 years in there where I was under contract to Universal, where I was taking every kind of acting class and voice and fencing and movement and whatever. I was taking it, and that served me well. It was sort of my education, my master's education in acting, and then learning to direct too. But then I also learned that I could learn it on the job from directors that I was working with and get hints. I remember one director said, sit down every chance you get, don't run anywhere, and fire somebody the first day. and you can't do that in a television episode. Yeah, right. But it was just, I think, a hint that it's a tough business. And if somebody is not up to your standards, especially in the days where you were doing 3 to 5 movies a year as a director, you wanted to hone your crew, and if somebody wasn't up to your standards, you get rid of them. And listen, I got fired once, and it's a shock. It's a wake up call.
You say that Anthony Hopkins had the lines down pat on the very first day. Any other people out there whose names you'd like to drop who became an inspiration for you?
Oh my God, we'd be here all day.
Well, well, Hopkins as an actor in theater would do that on the first day of rehearsal. And usually you have 4 weeks to learn your lines and learn the blocking and walk, just rough through the play and then slowly get off the book. But he set a standard that I emulated once I did Taming of the Shrew. I was doing it in a theater company in Austin and playing Petruchio. And so I backed into it. I said, well, I'm going to, a week before I get there, I want to make sure I'm off book. And I had 650 lines or whatever it was of iambic pentameter that I had to learn. And so I had, maybe 6 weeks. So I figured I got to learn 100 a week. That's 7 days a week I was working, or 6 days a week. And then Sunday I would review everything. So, it was like, 30 lines a day. So I would just do that. And then the next day I'd do 60. And then and I have 90 and then slowly build up. But it was a joy because by the time I got to rehearsal, I was there. I was literally ready to go on after 2 days. And it was such a relief and so wonderful for me to be able to have that experience. Um, and usually the same is true of film too. You want to also be there for not just the day's work, but know the work for the whole week, and so that you can oh well, in that scene I'll do this, and in this scene I'll do that, because you shoot out of order in film. So you want to know what I'm going to do in the last scene or the first scene, because now I'm shooting the last scene, so I've already got to have established this. So it's a jigsaw puzzle in film.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. And Tim, okay, so I know things have changed dramatically, but how has the industry in your mind changed the most since you started? And what's one thing that you really miss about the earlier days of Hollywood?
Um, the cameras got smaller. It used to be just all done in Hollywood on a stage or on the lot, and they all had back lots. I miss back lots. I mean, the back lot is where there were streets with houses on them that would simulate a suburban neighborhood, like Leave It to Beaver or Marcus Welby's street. I think Leave It to Beaver's house and Marcus Welby's house were the same place. Um, and the Universal still has a backlot because they use it for their tours, but they also use it to shoot on. You have a New York street, and you have a small town, and things like that. But it's expensive. They all used to have Western towns, and so there were like 6 or 8 streets around Western towns, and a barn, and a saloon, and things like that. But rarely do they make Westerns as often as they used to. So that sort of went away, and now it's turned into you know executive spaces and lot buildings where all the executives are collected together. Um, what else has changed? It's still a handmade business. The technique has, the technical stuff has changed a little bit, but the the process of making films is still the process of making films. It starts with a script. It starts with actors and crew members who get together. It's handmade, and you could have two people shoot the same script on the same lot with the same sets, and it would be two totally different movies because they put the camera in different places, and everybody would tell the story a little bit differently. Um, I miss that it's not all here in Hollywood now. It was kind of great. It was like a small town, and you just go from this lot to that lot. Now we shoot in Vancouver and Atlanta or New York, or you shoot actually where the story takes place in Europe or wherever in the world. And now there's a lot of programs are called incentives where induce you to want to come and shoot in their town, like Atlanta. They'll give you 25 to 35% back to induce you to shoot there because it's good for their economy. And that's wonderful too.
Hmm. In the laundry list, or greatest hits list, I guess we should say, that Amy listed off at the top, she was going so fast because there are so many. I don't know if she said Animal House, and sooner or later we have to talk to you about Animal House, because when you're on the set, I assume that you were on double secret probation the entire time that you were shooting that darn thing. John Vernon actually was an actor I remember from when I was growing up as a kid in Toronto, because he was up there doing a lot of TV shows.
Sure.
But that particular film was like a freaking petri dish of actors. Karen Allen, you, John Belushi, Kevin Bacon. Why would John Landis was involved in that? We're talking about Second City, SCTV. I mean, it was partially written by them. Ivan Reitman. Why?
Hmm.
What all came together there, and what was it like working on that film? And can you go down the street without being called Otter? There's three questions.
Well, I get a lot of "damn glad to meet you" and a few other quotes that we can't say on the air, but from the film. You know what it was was it was comedy being made by young people for young people. It was the first time that had happened. I mean, Saturday Night Live was a year old at that time, and that was sort of. But Saturday Night Live, with all due respect to Lorne Michaels, was the National Lampoon. He took the National Lampoon show, which was John Belushi, Gilda Radner, Bill Murray. Let me think who else. Harold Ramis.
Yeah.
And he put that on the air. I mean, that he took the Lampoon and put it on the air on NBC. Basically, he got a few people, mostly Second City people, you know. And to his credit, that was a smart thing to do. And so that was sort of the where it was spawned from. And Harold Ramis and Doug Kenny, who was the founder of the Lampoon, wrote Animal House with Chris Miller. And Ivan wanted to direct it and was heartbroken when he couldn't, when they chose a Hollywood guy who had done a couple of little movies. He'd done it, and one of the executives had a girlfriend who was a script supervisor on Kentucky Fried Movie that John Landis was directing for the Zucker brothers. And they looked at that and said, "Oh, he's the guy for us." So they hired him. And Harold Ramis had written Boone, Peter Rieger's part, for himself, but Landis made Ivan go tell Harold he couldn't be in the movie because he was too old. And so that broke Harold's heart, and Harold didn't have anything to do with the movie. He was really heartbroken and went off to Europe and was writing a novel that I think he threw away. But the way they worked together, Ivan had Harold during Animal House write a script for him called Meatballs with two of his other friends, so that Ivan could go and direct right after Animal House was released. He couldn't even come to the premiere because he wanted to direct. And there was just this young group of people that were so comedically, they were just geniuses, and they wanted to make these kinds of movies that spoke to them. And they changed the course of American cinema comedy, you know. I mean, with Ghostbusters and the vacation movies and John Landis's movies, Coming to America. I mean, all of them were present on Animal House, which was the studio hated. They didn't like Animal House. They didn't want to make it. They didn't want to spend any money on it. They tried to stop us at every juncture we came to and put a roadblock up, and we'd sort of go around it and stuff. I wasn't even supposed to be in that movie. They wanted Chevy Chase, and Landis, the director, didn't want it to be a sketch movie. He wanted it to be grounded with real actors around John Belushi to keep him real, and then you'd have real comedy coming out of it. And he didn't want a sketch movie. So I got a chance to come in and audition and audition with Peter Riegert. And we were both improv actors at the time. I had just started studying with a group that I helped found called the Groundlings. And
Oh yeah.
here in Los Angeles. And my good luck was being there with Peter, and we got him laughing with just ad libs and improvs during our scenes. And after 2 days of auditions, they hired me. So I lucked out, you know. But that's because John Landis wanted real actors like John Vernon and me, and to play it straight, you know, or slightly exaggerated. I mean, John Vernon was wonderful in that. Her on double secret major. Yeah, fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life.
Oh my God. So Tim, so I have to say this is near and dear to my heart because Ivan Reitman and my brother Dan Goldberg were producing partners and best friends for 50 years. So it was my
That's right.
brother that wrote
Meatballs.
Meatballs, and then
Yeah.
I
He
heard
went to
I
that
was
camp, didn't he?
yeah,
He went to
yeah, and so White Pine, and then so yeah, so I heard all the stories.
they
Ivan
shot
was
it there.
he was exactly. And so, would you say that? What's it like working with, let's say, those who aren't as seasoned as you? Do they have the same work ethic? Like, what's it like now working
I think
with?
there's, well, I don't think it's changed. I think, actors are trained, and they have improv, and some actors are more trained than others. And but it's not, if some go to Juilliard and come out, like many of our great actors, highly skilled at doing theatrical performances and Shakespeare, and so they've got a depth of training. And then some actors, look at Clint Eastwood. He,
Right.
he does what he does, and I have tremendous respect for him because he's like the movie stars of old. Like when I talked to Henry Fonda, when I worked with him on Yours, Mine, and Ours, I'd asked him, how does he approach a part? And he goes, it's pretty simple. I walk in the room, I hit my mark, I look them in the eye, and I tell them the truth. And he just sort of reduced it to a simplicity and of honesty. And of course, that was within the character that he'd constructed. I mean, he was selling himself a little short, but it was it was a technique that he crafted by being a theater actor and doing a play and a part again and again and again until you find the exact right way to do it with this audience or that audience. You find if you do this, you get a good laugh, or you get a good response. And I think that's true today. There's always actors who aren't very well trained and they don't know their lines. And, and as a director, that's always been my problem is you want people to show up. I remember when I was I was directing episodes of Cold Case with Catherine Morris, and she was wonderful every day. She was the number one on the call sheet, and she was the star of the show. She never brought the sides to the set. She always knew every line, every word, and set a standard so the guest actors would look at her and go, "Oh my God." And the West Wing was that way. It was more Shakespearean than any other show because the text was so dense and so melodic and rhythmic, and it's such great writing from Aaron Sorkin
Right.
that you had to say it exactly as written, or they would do it another take until you got it exactly as it was written. And it it had to be said that way because he crafted it so that there was a melody to it. And very few writers are that good. But it took a certain kind of actor. And like I'd go into work sometimes and I'd find Allison Janney there in the press conference area, the press room of the White House, running and running and running her scenes that she was going to shoot in 3 days over and over and over again. And because it was like a one act play. So that's how a dedicated actor approaches their work. And I saw it on the West Wing personally that all the actors were that way because you couldn't do a 2-page scene with walk and talk with Aaron Sorkin's text with two of us walking down the hallways of the White House, no cuts, without being rehearsed, without having thought about it and prepared it weeks in advance or days in advance.
You that was a perfect segue, by the way, because I was going to ask you a question about what it's like to be the vice president. And have you got any advice for our vice president elect? And I'm not supposed to ask political questions, but I can't
Well,
resist. Have you survived these past few months?
well, I just focus on my work, and what Aaron Sorkin said when I came into audition for John Hoynes, who was the vice president. Um, I said, what's this guy like? What's the deal? He was a senator, and he had been, I think, the head of the Senate, and he said, well, he plays a lot of golf. And I thought, oh, I got it. What he meant was he's a pro. He's a social animal. He works the rooms.
Loser.
He's yeah. And so that's my advice to the vice president elect, I guess, would be to play a lot of golf. Um,
Yeah,
but you know, but it was it was a great part for me.
Oh
I was
yeah.
sort of the bad guy for that. I wasn't ever allowed inside the inner workings of the West Wing group. That with one exception, I had an episode where John Spencer, who played Leo McGarry, was having his problems with alcohol, and he confided in me that it was an alcoholic and wanted help. And I confided in him as my character that I was a recovering alcoholic, and I had a meeting, an AA meeting in the White House that was secret, but I invited him. And that was the only time I ever had any trust given or taken from me, between me and another member. Bartlett, sort of didn't trust me, but it was a great foil for those people.
No,
But
totally.
I love that part, and it was the first time I'd been in a television series where instantaneously it was a hit, and instantaneously I couldn't walk down the street without people going, "Hoynes, Hoynes, Vice President! Oh my God, I love your show!" And it was. I haven't experienced anything quite like that with Heart of Dixie. I did with younger women, but I must say, Virgin River is one of those shows
yeah.
that it is just uniformly admired and loved by so many people, and the people respond, to my character as well. So I'm recognized quite a bit for that.
They say,
Well,
"Hey,
did they,
Doc."
they didn't run down the street saying, "Damn glad to meet you"? I'm sure they did.
No, they did that too, absolutely, um, and even today, I mean, anybody around a college, anytime I'm around a college or with um, fraternity members, especially, or sorority members, they've seen Animal House. But then there are people from here and there every now and then. No, I've never seen Animal House. So it's all. And I was a student of film, so I always looked at old movies and still do, and foreign films and any kind of movie I can find to look at and admire and learn from, because you learn. You look at Billy Wilder's movies, the variety of films the man made, and boy, it's just there's stuff I can learn from every shot he does. And the same is true of Spielberg. I mean, he's one of those chameleons he can do West Side Story, he can do Jaws, he can do E.T. in 1941, and I mean and he's always setting the bar higher and trying a different challenge when he makes a movie, that he tries something he has never done before, which I
Yeah.
find admirable and just and very brave.
And Tim, wow, time flies. And before we ask our last question, I just want to ask you one more question. Any role that you want to play that you haven't yet?
Um, I yeah, I would love to play more classical stuff. I mean, I look at there's a big hit movie out now, Gladiator. The two,
Yeah.
and I'd love to be in something like that. I think it's typically a British thing, because Americans often aren't. You know, the British are trained to have an upper class. They're educated as an upper class. So when you have upstairs, downstairs, you have people behaving in certain ways of the elite, the titled, the peerage. And we don't really have that here in our country. So it's oftentimes very difficult for actors to approach classical material. And that's something I'd love to do. I'd love to do more Shakespeare and challenge myself that way, because it's really, you go to the core of acting. And if you can make that believable and real and sound simple and honest, then you have mastered a real difficult challenge to an actor.
Thank you so much for opening up your life to us. You said you like Billy Wilder. You're influenced greatly by Billy Wilder, who wasn't. So you're still ready for your close-up, I take it.
Yes, well done. Well played, Kevin. Thank you.
Well, we want to ask you, because you've spent your entire life, 70 years, entertaining people. Why is it that you believe in people? That's our question of the week that we ask everyone. Why? What keeps you still going? Why do you believe in people?
It's paid off for me. You know, it's better to, and one of the things about doing comedy, it's better to go and spend your day laughing on a set and making people laugh and shooting scenes that'll make people laugh and brighten up their day than the murder of the week on certain episodic shows, which I directed a lot of those. And after a while, I was just getting so depressed. But I believe in people because I think that I come from a family of strong Southern women, and that my mother and grandmother had very positive philosophies about life. That if you get knocked down, get back up and do it again. And it was a lesson I learned from Lucy. I think she liked me and thought I was really a good actor, but I needed to be toughened up. And I think that having that family of the crew and other actors around me that I could trust, and trust is what happens in improv. You trust your fellow actors and partners to be there for you and catch you when you fall, or to help you up over the wall when you hit a wall. So I just find I can do more in life with the help of other people and being a help to other people than trying to go it alone. So that's why I believe in people, and hopefully they'll, and my friends believe in me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you,
so
Amy.
much.
Thank you,
Really
Kevin.
appreciate it.
Thank you. You are now off double secret probation. You can go and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all.
And
Thank
best
you so
of luck
much.
with the book.
Yeah,
Thank
welcome.
you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, Tim. Take care.
Bye.
7 decades, Tim Matheson has been working in the industry. He is, what a lovely guy. I mean, and just so giving and sharing. And I think read his book, because there's magic between the lines, and he offers master classes within the book. And there's a lot to learn from a wise and creative and talented guy like Tim.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad to meet you, Tim. Thank you very much for being on. And if you enjoyed listening to Tim, you'll enjoy all our other episodes. So please subscribe to Believe in People and catch us wherever you find your podcasts for a heaping helping dose of positivity. Thanks. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, everyone.